And I want to say I heard just recently a police chief mention the fact that if casino gambling were approved in the National Harbor, that they would definitely need increased security.
Yeah.
So that's something that would be a major expense in terms of ensuring that everything in that property would still be nice and beautiful as it is
Right.
now without, like you said, bringing in more problems. And I'm just wondering, though, with respect to one of the issues that we're concerned about, the Prince George's County Drug Policy Coalition, what message does the presence of casino gambling send to our young people if that were to be approved?
Well, again, and you're getting into messages, and I'm sure a lot of the evangelical folks in the community would be concerned as well. I myself would be concerned. But the bottom line, I guess, is, freedom of speech, freedom of right for people to be able to, do the things that they want to do. We're back to the drug war. I mean, if somebody wants to smoke marijuana or do that, or somebody wants to take a drug or something into their system, I mean, they have a right to do that. The bottom line is what level do we now begin to profit off of that? And that's what we have been really doing, to me, as far as I'm concerned, as far as the drug war. I think we have been profiting off of it because of all of the law enforcement, everything that we put out there to try to call ourselves so far to combat it, and we're really not combating it. So the same way with handling this whole thing with with gambling, you're going to have to, if you're going to do it, you're going to have to secure it. It's a lot of money in it. We know that. It is a super lot of money in it, and they know that, and they're saying, well, we'd rather take the chance on doing it, and we put these things up. But again, morally, if you look at it from a moral standpoint, the message to our children would be that, freedom of speech. If there's something that you want to do, whether it's moral, what we consider immoral or moral, you have a right to do that, even though the bottom line is we are saying that if you're going to do it, the system has decided they want to make money off of it. And I personally don't believe in that, don't think that that's the proper way to go about it. But again, that's a debate for the pundits in Congress, and the people we put up there to say, hey, make the laws for us.
Or perhaps a referendum in November prior to national elections, particularly in Maryland,
right.
For the voters to weigh in and have their voice heard about this issue. I do know, however, when speaking with some young people, even though they know that they would not be able to afford going to casino-style gambling, that several of them will tell you, if you have an opportunity to speak with some of them, that they would be interested in stopping by, trying to see what's going on. And therein, to me, could lie a big problem.
Well, and you could compare that to the lotto. I mean, the bigger the lotto gets, the more the news announces it, the more people play it who probably never played it before. I mean, it continues to, it's a residual, what do you call it? It's a domino effect. I mean, folks who may have never have gambled before, all of a sudden they start getting these what we call illusions of grandeur, where they're thinking, hey, this might be the one I might win. Or that $5 or $10 or $20 that you putting in there, you're just adding to the pot that maybe somebody put $1,000 or put their last dollar, their last paycheck in there. It's that's the type of vice that it is, that it creates that atmosphere.
Well, I know that it is going to be a big issue, and people are very split on where they, come in or stand on this particular issue. So we will be talking about this a little more, perhaps in some later shows. Now I want to talk about the Trayvon Martin case, a young 17-year-old black teenager who was killed in Sanford, Florida.
Right.
I attended a prayer vigil recently at a church in Fort Washington. There were several mothers there who told heartbreaking stories of losing a son to gun violence. One mother said her son, who was an African-American police officer, was killed by a fellow white police officer. Another mother's son was killed by another African-American teenager, the victim of violence that was targeted somewhere else. None of these cases received the kind of attention that we're seeing with the Trayvon Martin case. Why is this case, in your opinion, the subject of so much media attention?
Well, and I've talked about this with others. I just think, it's one of those sort of incidents where the stars lined up right. I mean, Cases like this come up every now and then, just like remember the Gina 6, where all of a sudden everybody sort of focused their attention and went to it. The culture of violence, what we call in law enforcement, is still there, and it's always been. I've had an opportunity to observe it. Again, I go back to everything that we do in America. I say, if it was all equally applied, people get out here and they say, well, this law that you stand your ground law, that's not right. That's a law that needs to change. No, the law doesn't need to change. It's how we apply the law. It's do we have a double standard when we apply the law to somebody white as opposed to somebody black standing your ground? That's what really, we got enough laws on the books to last from being now and I think until when they reach second coming. But I'm just saying again, how do we apply these laws? And people got to really begin to understand with Trayvon Martin, the whole culture of the police, law enforcement. How did they handle that case after the incident went down? Should Zimmerman had been arrested, right should that scene had been preserved? Certain things could have been done, even if it turned out later that he wasn't at fault. You still would have preserved the scene and everything properly. Now what you got is a botched procedure that could put doubt in anybody's minds. I pretty much seen Zimmerman walk free, to be honest with you. I knew he was going to get a bond because when you look at everything that has happened in that case, and you say, why did that happen that way? Now, had the circumstance had been reversed, being Zimmerman being a black man shooting, say, a young white kid, would it have been the same thing? Absolutely not. We see that over and over again. I saw it in law enforcement, the double standards constantly, even when we went out on the war on drugs. And I told my white manager one time, why are we just targeting the urban areas? And he said, well, we go into those more affluent white communities. He said, they know judges, lawyers, and congressmen. Foggy said, we go out there and start locking them people up. We're going to get a phone call. They're going to shut our operation down. He said, let's just go after the weakest links. So the whole culture is centered around pretty much centering its attention on the weakest link, which turns out to be people of color. So when we look, the same thing in the Trayvon Martin case goes on. Trayvon Martin's go on all the time around the country, whether it's somebody either being killed or being put in jail or being falsely arrested. Trayvon Martin happens every day. So the stars, I believe, on this case just happen to line up the way they did on the Gina 6. And hopefully it'll open up a dialogue in this country where this country will begin to face the fact it is two Americas, a black and a black and brown and a white America. And how do we bring those two together so everybody can at least have the perception that we're getting equal justice?
Well, that is definitely something that has occupied numerous the time of many of those who are in the political arena, those who are pundits and so forth, talking about the relevance of race, the relevance of gender, all kinds of various background characteristics in the arrest of those who are perceived to have committed crime. And we also know with respect to social class, the crime rates are indeed higher in lower income areas, but that does not necessarily mean that the poor are more deviant. We know, as you mentioned, the police are devoting more resources in many instances to these poor neighborhoods.
Exactly right.
And so lower income people are more likely to be caught, arrested, prosecuted, and incarcerated. So that is another big issue, this whole question of class. But let me just ask you one other thing before we move to another topic, and that is to, given your background in law enforcement, what training do you typically receive when you use deadly force?
Well, our training is simply that there has to be either imminent danger to you or to somebody in the community. Now, they can use whatever force is necessary to make an arrest. But the bottom line is, so those are what law enforcement under. Now, the civilian, there's two sets of laws out there. One is stand your ground, and the other one is you have to retreat. After the danger, what is considered the danger is over, you have to retreat. You can't keep pursuing the subject and all of that. Stand your ground simply means you can stand your ground right there. You don't have to turn around and run or try to retreat. You can just stand there. You don't have to take force. But again, it is all subjective to what was in the mindset at the end. It's going to all be about a jury or somebody looking at this and determining whether what you thought you needed to do was the proper action. So it always comes down to that anyway.
So how confident are you that the public will learn what really happened in the Trayvon Martin case?
Absolutely not. I mean, I don't think the public is going to really learn because the scene. That's why in law enforcement we talk very well to preserve the scene, to preserve the crime scene. Everybody sees that, the yellow lines and everything else. But if you botch up the crime scene, that's what you would do if you really don't want somebody to get convicted or whatever. You want to mess a scenario up, and the cops do that. I mean, it's a lot of police officers out there and things that happen. They come in right away and they start assessing the situation. All right, we'll move this over here. Don't do this. That's the real world. I mean, people out there in the public may not know that, but inside law enforcement, I know that because I know when the first thing I came out of the academy, when I stepped into the district where I had to work, they said, well, Fogg, I know you learned all that stuff at the academy, but this is how we do it here.
Okay, you are listening to Real Talk with your host, Dr. Valencia Campbell. The Prince George's County Drug Policy Coalition will host its first annual Empowering Young Leaders Scholarship Program in Fort Washington. If you'd like to know more information about that, give us a call on 301-341-2247. Matthew Falk will be one of our guests, as will be the Honorable Obie Patterson, Councilman of District 8. We're back with my guest, Matthew Falk, Chief Deputy U.S. Marshal, former Chief Deputy. And let me just ask you to comment briefly about the upcoming book that you have. What is the title?
Well, it's going to be Bigots with Badges. And pretty much the whole emphasis is my journey to justice within the U.S. Marshal's Office and the whole what it took to take a stand to really, when you put on that gun and that badge, you swear to serve and protect, you uphold the law. That means upholding the law under whistleblower circumstances. It doesn't matter. It means you stand up. I tell people all the time, the only way we could enforce the law is in the government is we have to have informants. We have to have people that have been out there in that world and come in and tell the truth about what happened. That's how you're able to prosecute and go after the right people. Well, the same way in law enforcement. If we have officers out there that see and observe other officers act in malicious or wrong way, they got to be willing to come out. And when they don't come out, it's because they realize that they got to depend on those same people behind them to protect their back. And that's that blue wall of silence. And my book centers all around that whole blue wall of silence within the federal system.
Okay, and how much emphasis do you give to the judges, the role of the judges and the lawyers that were involved in your case in the book?
Well, again, I mean, it's systematic. I mean, everybody, you either toe the line or you come out and when you come out against the line, you don't go according to what we call the status quo, then pretty much you're hanging yourself out there. So to me, to go to get a $4 million verdict and then to go through two cases, Court of Appeals, that tells you a lot about the system that was backing me up. It tells you how hard they fought to not get that verdict.
Well, we know that it took an awfully long time for you to get the justice in your case, to get that multi-million-dollar verdict, and we certainly salute you for your persistence in getting justice in your case. And we do hope through the coalition that we will be able to involve our young people to also stay on the right path so that they will not have to fight such a difficult line of war. So I want to thank you, Matthew, for being our guest today and all that you're doing in the community, both locally and nationally. Thanks for tuning in today, and see you next Saturday at noon on Real Talk.
You've been listening to Real Talk with your host, Dr. Valencia Campbell. For more information about Real Talk, contact Dr. Valencia Campbell at 301-341-2247 or reach them online at valenciacampbell2003 at yahoo.com.